Hello, Jabin, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you can start now.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Kindly note that during the course of this program, all the participants will be muted. In case of any query, please type it in the chat box. A very good afternoon. We have gathered here on this online platform for the session of Look Ahead, which is a series of lectures and workshops organized by Dayapuram Arts and Science College for the benefit of student community to sail through the current COVID-19 situation and establish their career goals. Let me invite Ms. Kripa from second year BBA at Dayapuram College to deliver the welcome address.
Good afternoon. I would take this opportunity to welcome all the people who made this program possible. Let us begin by welcoming Dr. M. Bashir sir, Chairman of Al Islam Charitable Trust. Welcome, sir. Our heartiest welcome to our patron, Abdurrahim sir. Let me extend our warm welcome to the guest of the day, Mr. Rishikesh KB, Assistant Professor of Commerce Department, Christ University, Bangalore. Welcome, sir. I would also like to welcome Dr. N.P. Ashley, Assistant Professor, St. Stephen's College, New Delhi, and volunteer in charge of Dayapuram. I would also like to extend our welcome to Srividya NT, Principal of Dayapuram Arts and Science College. Let me welcome my teachers, friends, and participants of this lecture. Warm welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kripa. Next, I would like to invite Ms. Neha of 5th semester BCom, Dayapuram, to introduce the guest of the speaker of the day.
The guest speaker of the day, Mr. Rishikesh KB, is an assistant professor in the Department of Commerce at Christ College, Bangalore. He had completed his graduation and post-graduation in commerce from the University of Calicut. He also holds an MBA degree from Indira Gandhi National Open University. He did his MPhil from the University of Delhi. Currently, he is also pursuing his PhD from Bharatiya University. He is a net holder in both commerce and management. Mr. Rishikesh has authored numerous articles which are published in various newspapers and prestigious journals. He has been a keynote speaker and presenter in various seminars, conferences, and symposiums. He has undergone numerous workshops, faculty development programs, and trainings from prestigious institutes like IIM Bangalore, IIM Calicut, etc. He is a life member of Indian Commerce Association, Calicut Management Association, and Sadguru Sangeeta Sabha. Apart from being a dedicated tutor, speaker, and writer, he is a trained classical singer too. It's a privilege to have you among us for this session today.
Thank you, Neha. Next, we move on to the awaited lecture. I invite Mr. Rishikesh to take over.
Am I audible now? Hello?
Yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, thank you. The host has disabled screen sharing. Can you just allow me? I think I need to be granted the permission to share the screen. Screen share.
Sajad, can you please do it?
System admin, I would need the permission to share the screen. The host has disabled. Could you please do that? Screen sharing.
Just a second, sir. We are trying to enable it.
All right. Yes, now I'm able to do that. I hope my screen is visible now.
Yes, but it is visible.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that generous and kind introduction. What always compels me to continue associating with Dayapuram or Dayapuratukar is how you prefer to be branded as, is that there is a lot of fire, a lot of spark in all of you, and almost everyone is committed to a larger cause, which is beyond commercial or any other interest. So it's as I said, it's always a pleasure, and I consider it an honor to associate with Team Dayapuram. Thank you at first, Professor Ashley, who had recommended or suggested to host this event. TG Sir, Dr. Shri Vidya ma'am, if I'm not wrong, is the principal. And most importantly, Dr. M. Bashir Sir and CT Abdul Rahim Sir, who's the patron, if I'm not wrong, who made this interaction possible. So I've always had good memories whenever I've come to campus, especially the hospitality that you give. And I always love the food that you serve there. So thank you for every small gesture, small and big gestures that you've done. So let's begin. But before that, there are a few disclaimers. I'm not an expert in the topic that we have chosen for discussion today, but all what I have is a lot of interest, and whatever ideas that you end up seeing on screen and also on this little interaction is primarily out of my own interest, trying to cross connect different literatures, which I've taken from a lot of news articles, journals, recent discussions and debates in different forums. So most of the ideas aren't my own, it's my perspective, which I've drawn cross-connecting all the ideas that I've kind of collated or mobilized from multiple sources. So you could feel free to stop me and ask questions at any moment during the course of my presentation, or even correct me if I'm going wrong somewhere, probably misquoting or misrepresenting any facts. Could correct me if I'm going wrong. But my humble request is, if you have any questions, please do reserve towards the end of our discussion, because I'm told that we'll be having a separate interactive session, probably for about half an hour once the lecture is over. So that's the kind of rough format which I have in mind. Maybe around one hour, or probably 1 hour or 15 minutes of a presentation, or a bit of a discussion or a presentation, whatever you wish to call it. And the rest of the time we can take up a few questions. So the other day when we had a discussion, I had a little chat with PG sir and Srividya ma'am, and today morning also we had a long discussion with Ashley sir. So the primary intention behind that conversation was to understand the dynamics of the group, or probably the heterogeneity of the group. I'm told that there are students from cross disciplines. There are students from BCom, some postgraduate students. So I'll try or rather I'll attempt addressing the cross section of the people, and but primarily as any interaction which you're planning or you had done earlier, the objective of this discussion would be mostly to trigger some thoughts or kind of generate a curiosity in the subject that we have taken up for discussion. So, okay. So this is a very fundamental and a basic question that all of us at this moment do have in our mind. Yeah. Life after Corona, what is awaiting us? Probably that's one of the intention behind the commencement of an online lecture series, to build hope, to create an aspiration, and also, of course, learn from each other. But on the whole, if you look at the current scenario, um, it's like we can certainly do have hope, but hope is never a strategy. Yeah, that's not what I'm stating, but I've just borrowed the words of James Cameron. He said, "Hope is never a strategy. Luck is not a factor, and fear is not an option." So only having hope is not what would save us, but we need to really plan and think and act upon what would bring about a change, what would transform from what we are today to what we are aspiring for in the future. So that's the basic premise on which I'll be discussing. We are all aspiring as I think we are all aspiring for a new normal or a new world order. So, and all what we have in hand currently is kind of having a bit of a hope. And let me begin the conversation now. This is how you write crisis in Chinese. All right. This is mostly used in management and commerce discipline while we begin a discussion on attitude, while we begin discussions on hope, aspirations, and all that. But it has a different connotation here. Now, the word crisis, if you take each of the letters out from it, you would find two different interpretations. In Chinese, it's called pinyin, and the words are Vijay or I just can't pronounce it, but the interpretation is one side in crisis, there is a lot of disaster, but on the other side, there is a lot of hope. That's how the Chinese word crisis, when you write crisis in Chinese, and when you try translating it into English, taking each words separately, each letter separately, this is how you end up interpreting it. So that's exactly the basic, mindset that all of us need to have currently when we are in a crisis, or when we are facing a lot of challenges, both in our personal life, professional life, or no matter. And it has, the current pandemic has gone through, different kinds of challenges. Now, what I was trying to say is the character signifies both danger as also an opportunity. So we need to talk more about opportunity, even though there are a lot of challenges that we need to deal with. So that's, again, as I said, my attempt would be for the next 1 hour to build hope, to kind of build an aspiration, look at the positives even amidst all the crises. Now, one of the positive that I've come across is this thing. I mean, you all might have read this news way back in the second month of 2020, Feb. In fact, most of the newspapers had published this. NASA's graphic image showing the Chinese air, which has got cleaned up post the closure of a lot of factories. So there are positives happening. On one side, the coronavirus has brought down the carbon emissions because of the closure of a lot of industries. I think that's one hope we have, or especially when we talk a lot about the climate change and lots of other issues that, including the children have started pointing fingers at us. Greta Thunberg had said, made a very interesting statement. She said, "Our action is a reaction to your inaction." Yeah, your generation has not done anything, and therefore we have to, it's a kind of very interesting statement which he made. So the point here is, even amidst all this global crisis, there are positives, and one of the positives which I saw was the reduction in the carbon emission. Now, the second positive note which I came across was from Satya Nadella. He said, we saw 2 years of digital transformation in just 2 months. What we were planning for the next 2 years has already happened quite naturally in this past 2 months. And this was a statement which came in April, 30th of April. By April itself, a lot of digital transformation has happened. Is it for the good or bad? Of course, we need to discuss that in detail, but a lot of organizations who were reluctant to change, who were reluctant to adapt technology, had gone with technology. So that's another, just think about this platform itself. How many of us have taught online prior to this pandemic? How many of us were confident enough to use a Zoom or a Google Meet or any such platform for that matter? But we've done that because the situations compelled us to go online. So that's another major positive thing which I've come across. One, as I said, the reduction of carbon emission. And the second one is a lot of digital transformations in academic institutions, in business organizations, in almost in every, in fact, I have a couple of my friends and also students who are running advertising agencies and working in this segment. And they were telling, so this is like a Christmas season for us. There's this advertising agency based out of Bangalore. It's called Moshi Moshi. Ajay Botra and Rishabh Jain, both of my students, and they were telling, sir, we just can't handle the number of requests that we're getting because that much is the amount of digital transformation which is happening. So there are two things which, two positives which, I wanted to. So that is what I will try to talk more about the positives, and also referring to quite a few challenges that we're currently addressing. But another thing that, as a positive note, which I would like to share with you is that the current pandemic is not the first of its kind. We've had even worse than what we are currently having. So smallpox, we had Spanish flu, and COVID-19 is just one among, or the crisis that a health crisis, a major global health crisis. So there were questions whether this pandemic would become an epidemic and probably an endemic, but I don't think, because the science had advanced quite a lot, and there is a lot of hope which is coming from the field of science as well. So there are a lot of hope. Even there is a silver lining in all the cloud gathering. So that's again what I'll be discussing more about. So what I am trying to say is, if you look at our personal life, if you look at our professional life, if you look at our academics, because I'm mostly dealing or discussing this topic with academicians and also students, what has happened is a lot of change. And we always say this, there is one thing that's unchanged about change is that changes will change. Change is something which is kind of happens quite off and on. But what change has happened in the past couple of years for two reasons. And those two reasons is also something that I'll be discussing in detail, is unprecedented. The change which has happened in the past 1 year is much more than the change which has happened in the past 10 years. And what are those changes? There are two primary changes. That again is what I'll be initiating the conversation, initiating the discussion, and then build a small context and then get into the topic of the rise of gig economy. Yeah. So I'm just setting a broader context so that you kind of we'll be able to understand the concept in detail by the time we end up this presentation or a discussion. Now, broadly, if you look at organizations, if you look at individuals, a lot of things have changed. And today we are no more talking about pre-COVID and post-COVID. The discussion is mostly, and I think that's how we need to approach it. The discussion should be mostly about pre-vaccine and post-vaccine, because until and unless a vaccine comes which doesn't have much of side effects, I think the life is going to be uncertain. Nobody is going to gain the same confidence that we all had in our public life, as much as we have in our personal life. So a lot of things have changed during this pandemic. One, our working time was earlier, the office time mostly was like 9 to 5, but these days, roughly, I was just calculating the other day, the number of hours I spent online, or my screen time, and it was roughly around 14 to 15 hours every day. So from working 9 to 5, today it's like working anytime, anywhere. Now, corporate offices, a lot of mid-sized corporate organizations, especially the IT firms, a lot of my friends working in the mid-sized organizations, they were telling that they have shut their offices, or they've abandoned the building which they've took for lease. Why? They couldn't afford paying the huge rent or the lease amount. Instead, most of them have given 1,000 or 2,000 extra for their employees, gave an option to work from home, and those 1,000 or 2,000 were to meet the additional expenses, the internet expenses, and a lot of other expenses which they might incur, electricity expenses if we continue working from home, because this uncertainty is something which we don't know when it will get over. So most of the mid-sized organizations have already abandoned the building, or which they have taken on rent. And the predictions are, there's this EY and Ernst & Young, they've done an interesting study, and they say the people who have started working from home is likely to continue roughly around 37% of, sorry, it was not EY, it was Deloitte which has done the study. They did the survey among most of the corporates globally, and they say 37% of the people would continue or prefer continuing working from home, even post-pandemic, which means the work life is going to change drastically post-pandemic, at least the approach to it, because we haven't experienced, most of the IT firms were requesting their employees to do work from home. In fact, the other way is also, a lot of employees wanted an option of work from home, but it wasn't provided. But today, once they started experiencing the possibilities of work from home, many are preferring to remain with work from home options. So a lot of things are going to change pre and post COVID. And what are those major changes? As again, something that I'll be discussing in detail. So as I said, my presentation, that was just an introduction to what I wanted to discuss. My presentation, or my interaction with you, my little discussion with you, will have two components or two basic topic that I'll be discussing in detail. The first one is about, I said the past 5 years, a lot of things have changed. And one of the primary or one of the major shift is the fourth phase of industrialization, which has happened with or without our knowledge, or with or without our consent. Things have changed quite a lot in the technology sphere. And this is otherwise what we call the Industry 4.0, or the fourth stage of industrialization. We might have learned about industrialization earlier, yeah? But today we are in the fourth phase of industrialization. What are the earlier phases? I'll come to it later. So that's one part, this Industry 4.0, how much has it changed our professional and personal life? What are the possibilities? What are the pros and cons of it? I'll try to discuss that. That will be the first part of my presentation. The second part of my presentation would be mostly focusing about the current pandemic and also a lot of possibilities which it has brought in along with it, and also the kind of challenges that we are addressing right now. So that's the kind of rough agenda I have. I'll be talking first about Industry 4.0 and its relevance, its positives is also the kind of challenges. Second, I'll speak more specifically about the current COVID and, as I said, the pros and cons of it. So let's begin with the first module, which is about the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the fourth industrial revolution, or the Industry 4.0, has a history. It was not an overnight development. Now, let me go back to 1907. There was a permanent job called lamp lighters in New York. Yeah. And this was before the advent of electricity. And these lamp lighters, they had to go and lit the lamps in the public spaces or in the streets of New York. But on 24th of April 1907, they went on a strike. Why? Because all of these lamps, which were manually lit using fire and gas, were replaced with electricity. Yeah. And a lamp lighter, this is how they used to do it. Just ahead of them went methodically about his work, reaching upwards with a long, light cane, and they had to lit the lamp. But post electricity, they lost their job. And this was a job which these lamp lighters were doing for generations, at least 2 or 3 generations, they've been doing the same job. But today, do we have a job called lamp lighter? We don't. Yeah, that's the first example. The second example is there was a permanent post. It was a full-time job in bigger industries. And the name of the job profile was to read the daily newspaper to all the employees in an organization. It mostly happens in a company or an industry. Yeah. And he will be sitting at a higher pedestal, just as you see here. I have another image. He sits at a higher pedestal and he would read out the daily news loudly, adding his own, probably his own flavors. And then he makes it, today we talk about infotainment. This was the first form of infotainment. He would provide information at the same time, entertain the people there. Now, do we have a job called lector, Lector, in 2020? We don't have. Yeah. So I was referring to 2 examples, lamp lighters in New York. The second one is lector, Lector. Now, let me talk about a report which came in December 2017. McKinsey had come up with a report, and the title of the report is Job Lost, Jobs Gained Report. And it says by 2030, because of automation, because of mechanization, because of technology, 400 million jobs will get replaced. Either it will become redundant or you are not needed for such jobs. And those are jobs which we are currently doing. Yeah, accountants, teachers. I'll come to it in detail with examples, but a lot of jobs that we are currently doing will become absolutely useless or absolutely redundant by 2030. 2030 is not that far, just 10 years ahead. Yeah. And the reason, I mean, this is a classic example. 2010, We had a helicopter. We also had a cameraman to do an aerial shooting. I mean, if you have to have an aerial view of an event, this is how they had to do. But today, we just have to send a drone with a pre-installed camera. So how many people have lost the job? The pilot has lost the job, as also the cameraman, which is replaced with technology. This is just one example. There are several other examples which I'll, in the course of our discussion, we'll take it up. So a lot of jobs that we are currently doing will become irrelevant or absolutely unnecessary because these will get replaced by technology. And that is what McKinsey alerts, or that's what the job loss, job gain report emphasizes, which got published in December 2017. Now, there's this professor, Jerry Kaplan, professor from Stanford. He said, automation is now blind to the color of your collar. So it is not just one job. Doctors in US are losing job. Why? You enter your problems, you get a standard solution. Lawyers are losing the job. Why? Same. You enter the cloud server, gives you a more precise solution than a manual prescription. Investors are losing job. Investors in the share market. Why? You have a technology which has already replaced it. Accountants are losing job. Chartered accountants are losing job. Why? You have artificial intelligence and algorithm-driven decisions which are 70 to 80% more precise and accurate than human decisions. So almost all the job is under threat. And it is not just US which has started experiencing it. We have also started experiencing it. I'll go with examples in the subsequent slides. Now, what is this fourth phase of industrialization? Now, it happened in 4 different stages. 1784, we had the introduction of steam engine. In 1870, electricity. 1969, we had computers. And today, we are in the 4th phase of industrialization, and we call it the cyber physical systems. We have artificial intelligence, we have robotics, we have humanoids, you have self-driving cars. You know, imagination is the limit. Technology has invaded into almost everything that one could possibly imagine. So the 4th industrial revolution is the 4th phase of industrialization that we're currently in. Yeah. So what are the opportunities that it has brought in? What are the challenges that it has put across? Sebastian Thrun is another professor from Stanford. He also said that we are just seeing the tip of an iceberg. None of the office job is safe, says Sebastian Thrun, who's again a professor from Stanford. Now, let me just show a small video which explains the concept a little more in detail.
Welcome, Oliver. Glad to see you put on your blue shirt for the interview.
Yes, indeed. You're welcome.
Are you feeling stressed?
Just a bit, you know.
Please allow me to play some piano music to make you feel more comfortable.
I feel a bit better now, thank you.
Glad to hear that. Tell me, why should I hire you?
it's an interesting video, but I want you to watch that in detail later. Volvo, the brand Volvo, has come with a car which recruits its driver. No, it's not the people who are recruiting another, it's not a human being recruiting another human being. It's the technology which is recruiting a person. So that's the extent of technology innovation which has gone into our life, both personal as also professional life. I hope you're getting what the fourth phase of industrialization or where it is heading towards. So this brilliant book, Rise of the Robots, written by Martin Ford, and he talks about jobless future. He warns of the threat of a jobless future, pointing out that most jobs can be broken down into a series of routine tasks which can be completed by technology. You don't need human beings at all to complete a task. Yeah. So these are all the different kind of challenges that has happened mostly in the past 5 years. Now, this technology invasion into our personal and professional life has led to something called automation anxiety. Now, what is automation anxiety? A fear that I, as a person, as a professional, is irrelevant, is incompetent. Is there a future? Do I get a job? These are the questions which keep. The more you read, it's like a Pandora's box. The more you read about technology, the more you get really scared of the future that we are heading towards. So now let me talk a little more in detail about what is Industry 4.0. This is kind of a summarization of what Industry 4.0 has got on offer. 3D printing. I hope you're aware that an entire building was printed in the Middle East using 3D technology. Now you have augmented reality. I think I mentioned earlier, accountants are losing job, doctors, physicians. There is something called IBM Watson, which is replacing the doctors. ROS, it's an artificial intelligence integrated lawyer, technology-based lawyer. So Ross is replacing lawyers. Numerai, it is a technological replacement for stock market investors. Bartenders, I think it is in Singapore. They've replaced bartenders with, you have technology doing the bartender's job. Car drivers, they are losing the job because we already have something called, Tesla has already come up with it. Google has come up with something called Waymo. And a lot of other companies are planning to come with driverless cars. Now, personal assistants, some of us have already bought that. Siri, Alexa, on voice command, they start playing music or does things for us. So a lot of things have changed in this fourth phase of industrialization, or in the fourth Industry 4.0. These are not concepts which are in US or in Japan or in China. It has even reached our doorstep. I hope you're aware that there is this Peru robot restaurant in Chennai, where the people, it's the robots who come and serve the food. We have one in Bangalore as well. In Indira Nagar, we have a restaurant. I heard even in Kerala, somewhere in north part of Kerala, they've started a restaurants where robots come and serve the food. Now, we have, as I've already mentioned, 3D printing. The buildings are getting printed. Tata has ventured into even farming, precision farming. The farming is done by the drones. They come and monitor. Of course, there has to be a little bit of human intervention, but most of the work is done by the technology. In Japan, you have domestic help. You have servants who are, I think there is a movie as well in Malayalam, Android Kunyappan. It's purely based on a reality based out of how people have started using robots as domestic helps. Forget about all that. HDFC Bank, they have purchased robots which has replaced front office managers. And this happened about 3 or 4 years back. Imagine there are 3,000 branches of HDFC Bank, and all those HDFC banks replace front office managers with these robots. 3,000 people are losing job. I'm talking more in the context of that McKinsey report. Indus International School, that's further interesting. It's based out of Bangalore. They bought 3 robots. And these robots are replacing the faculties there, the teachers there, Indus International. You can go back and do a bit of Google search and try to understand more about this. So the whole point is, a lot of technology innovation has happened both in our personal and professional life. And a lot of things are positive, but it has also brought in a lot of challenges. Now, I wish to also play a video, but I don't know how far I think I'll skip this, but please do go back and watch this video, Fly Zoo Hotel. It is started by Jack Ma, and he's planning to start a lot of branches across the globe. And the speciality of this Fly Zoo Hotel is that there is zero human intervention. There is absolutely no human intervention here. You have room boys. This is what you see here on screen is a room boy. Yeah. So from entry to exit, everything is taken care by technology. So hotel industry, which is also kind of fully into technology. So this is just a gist of what Industry 4.0 has got on offer. As I said, you could do DNA editing. You could, in fact, design babies. The color, the talent, all those things can be, you can buy babies. You need not, so that's the level of technological advancement which, so this is what gets summarized in this article called The Future of You. It's a brilliant piece. If you find it interesting, if you find the topic interesting, please do go back and read The Dawn of Singularity and The Future of You. It's written by Ray Kurzweil. A brilliant piece of where we are in 2019, and by 2099, how much is the world going to change? Both our personal as also our professional life is going to change. Now, having said all that, let's look at a larger perspective of business, or how technology has transformed the business. If you look at it, if you look at the points I have listed here, the car sales have gone down considerably, but on the other side, Ola and Uber, demand for Ola and Uber is rising. Restaurants are closing, but the food delivery is increasing because there are other alternative models which are evolving. Tuition classes are decreasing, but the online classes are increasing. You have Byju's becoming, the other day I was reading the website of UNESCO. UNESCO, even they quote Byju's as the most sought after globally and the most profitable venture globally in terms of online education. So the point here is conventional business models are changing, mostly with the advent of technology or with the fourth phase of industrialization or the Industry 4.0. A lot of possibilities of technology is blended with organizational functioning. Yeah. Now, what is it in a nutshell what I was trying to discuss till now? It's not the economy which is struggling, but it is the business models which are changing. Yeah, economy is doing fine. Even amidst all this pandemic and crisis, do we ever get to see a major market crash, a stock market crash, or a major financial crisis? No, things are happening. If not in one platform, some other platform it is happening. Yeah. So see, all what I'm trying to build up is to give you a context of why the gig economy is important. I'll come to the topic in a while. Now, this world that we are currently in is also referred to, this again is a terminology from the American military, US military. They borrowed it to this context. A lot of scholars borrowed it to this context. It's called VUCA. The world we are currently living is a VUCA world. What is VUCA? Everything is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The more and more technology gets into our personal and professional life, the more and more we start coming up with newer technology devices, it brings in more complexities in our life. So VUCA represents volatility. The demands of the environment are changing. Uncertainty. We don't know what's relevant today will become relevant tomorrow. I mean, the other day I was watching a video in YouTube. It says what an MCA student learns in the first year of his graduation or her graduation becomes absolutely irrelevant or redundant by the time he or she graduates, which means the pace at which technology is changing is unprecedented, unpredictable as well. So everything is going to be uncertain and it's becoming more and more complex. Do you think mobile phones have simplified our life? It has actually complicated our life. Of course, there are benefits to it. When you don't get a Wi-Fi, that's one problem. When there is no balance, that is another problem. When you go to a place where there's no network, there is another problem. So with all the possibilities that technology brings in, there are also other challenges with. So it's life with more and more technology, the life is becoming more and more complex. Now, ambiguous, the environment is unfamiliar. We don't know, and we don't have the expertise to understand the technological changes as well. So the world that we currently in, especially the Industry 4.0, is also referred to as volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. Now, please keep this in mind because there is an alternative to it. That's the possibility, which I'll discuss towards the end of a discussion. So today, this statement by Karl Marx is becoming more and more important, more and more relevant. The production of too many useful things results into too many useless people. Are we becoming irrelevant as individuals when technology comes in? Or how do we become relevant? I think that's a better way of asking. How do we become relevant when technology is kind of surpassing all the possibilities of human possibilities? Or are we relevant? Yeah. Okay. So this is a bigger question that we'll need to address: automation anxiety. I think I mentioned about it. The anxiety, which is kind of slowly and gradually building up, the more we try to understand about technology, the more complex, volatile, uncertain, and ambiguous it is. All right. So that was the first part of my presentation, which I spent most of the times discussing and deliberating about the technological advancements and how much has it brought in a major shift, a major change in our life. Now, the second part of my discussion is about the current coronavirus and the pandemic, which needs to be understood a little more in detail, mostly since you're all commerce management students. I think you need to understand a lot of details of several consequences of coronavirus, commercial consequences as well. Not just commercial, there are political, economic, social consequences, all of which we need to understand in detail. So it's not just one sector which is affected. Take any sector, it is in a way or the other. I have a couple of my students working in the tourism sector. They were telling the past 3 months they weren't paid anything because people have stopped traveling. There is absolutely no tourism. Airlines in sector, no salary for the past 4 to 5 months, especially the private airlines. So cinema theaters, e-commerce, of course, they did do better as compared to the pre-pandemic. But take any sector, restaurants, aviation, temporary staff, all of them have had a really hard hit. In fact, I don't want to mention the name of the college, but there's one college in Bangalore who made their staff work for almost 3.5 to 4 months. And then they were all asked to leave. There is no salary. Their future is also uncertain. And this is despite the fact that most of them were senior faculties with probably around 10 to 15 years of service in that institution. But what I'm trying to say is every sector is having some or the other consequences of this pandemic. And this is just a gist of, again, I took it from Moody's, apparel, automotive manufacturers, automotive suppliers, consumer durables, they're all highly exposed to this, corona pandemic. And there are other sectors, but no sector is free, completely free from the pandemic. Now, broadly speaking, I'll be discussing more from an article which I came across in the Economic Times. It's a brilliant piece. If you ever get time, please do go back and read this. It came on 28th May 2020. The Future Shock, 25 Job and Career Trends Post-COVID. It's very well articulated, very well researched as well. But I'll try to kind of elaborate. If you don't get time, please do pay attention for some more time. Now, there are different consequences. The first consequence post-pandemic is the loss of job. Now, about Bloomberg. Bloomberg had predicted about 13% drop in global merchandise. And this current job loss would also be much severe than the 1930s depression. I hope you're aware that in 1930 we had a major financial crisis, and 2007 also we have faced a second financial crisis. But 1930 still date is considered the worst hit. But as compared to 1930, current financial crisis would be 32% more, or the 32% plunge as compared to the Great Depression of 1930 is what Bloomberg is predicting. And the global GDP, or the gross domestic product, is likely to decline 2.5%. And we are going to witness unprecedented of job losses. The magnitude of job loss would be unprecedented. In fact, there are different terminologies which has come up. Zoom firing. You get a Zoom call, Zoom meeting, and then you're asked to leave. Or WhatsApp goodbyes. Or ping slips through email. You get an email which kind of a ping slip. You're terminated. So the point is job sector. Of course, IMF is also saying that India's growth is 1.9, would further decline to 1.9, while the rest of the world would be minus 3%. I think India there is doing slightly better, but on the whole, the global production, the global merchandise, everything is likely to decline and will be worse than the crisis that we had in 1930, which is till date considered the worst hit ever in human history. Yeah, so that's number one. The first consequence is about severe job losses. The second is about salary cut. Most of the colleges, fortunately, my institution has not done that, and a few institutions in Bangalore has not done, but majority of them have put at least 30 to 40% of the salary on hold. Yeah. So if one is lucky to retain a job, that itself is a luxury, So even with the job cuts or a salary freeze, the advice given as per this article is better to hang on to the current job. And the Economic Times survey says that more than 50% of the people across the globe are feeling, or they've already experienced a salary cut post this pandemic. So the first point which I discussed was about decline or the reduction of job opportunities. The second is about reduction in salary or the salary cuts, which many have experienced. The third is about, there is a normal usage in the human resource management literature. Last hired would be first fired. Yeah, the ones who are newly joined would be terminated first when there is a crisis. But that is not the case as per this article. That's not the case right now. Even the mid-level employees, even the senior employees are likely to lose their job. Why? Because they wanted, this is also a time where they are trying to replace the senior employees with new staff who has technological aptitude, which many of the senior staff does not have. So this is a time they can do right sizing and bright sizing. It's a very nice and diplomatic way of presenting. Right sizing is reducing, chopping the number of employees. And it's not just the new employees, even the mid-level and senior employees are likely to lose their job. That's another point. That's the third point. Now, the fourth one is the feeling of loneliness, isolation, being left out. I hope you remember a businessman based out of the Middle East. He has a huge house in Wayanad. He committed suicide. He jumped, from his building, and he committed suicide. What has happened in his case, sorry that I had to quote that example, but what has happened in his case is he had made a lot of investments in Indonesia, a lot of African countries, expecting, and his business was in petroleum. He was expecting a surge in the demand for petroleum products, but considering the current situation, our mobility itself is stuck. We don't know when we can go back to the normal or the new normal. The world is, the entire mobility itself is on a halt. So he just couldn't handle the unexpected lack of demand, and which also led to a lot of depression, a lot of feeling of isolation, and he committed suicide. This is just one case, but more are expected is what the predictions are. Now, let me go with another. I think I mentioned about 4 cases. Now, the fifth one is about the entrepreneurs. The entrepreneurs, if I may quote US example, 57% of the business is likely to drop post-pandemic. 2/3 is already shut. 8 in 10 startup is closed in US. This is a US statistics, but this had its, almost the same repercussions. And when I had a discussion with my friends in Bangalore, which is also considered as the Silicon Valley, the hub of all entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurship has had a severe setback, except the ones having online presence. All other business models, all other startup ventures are having a really bad time. So that's entrepreneurship is also under threat. Now, the next case is about the frontline jobs. What are those frontline jobs? Police officers, doctors, nurses, ambulance drivers, firefighters, a therapist or physical therapist, delivery boys, or even the flight attendants. So these are all the frontline jobs. No matter, frontline jobs, mostly the police and the firefighters, no matter what pandemic, no matter what crisis, they have to be there on duty. Doctors has to be there on duty. All of these jobs are likely to become less attractive is what the prediction is. At the same time, the frontline jobs like includes the ones which has close interaction with people is also likely to have less of demand. That's another prediction. Yeah. Now, what about the freshers? It's the demand for freshers is also likely to decline. A lot of my students who are placed in the campus, placed from campus, either their appointment letter is getting delayed or they've already withdrawn the list or withheld the list. They're not getting appointment. Why? Because the business is down. So the freshers are also likely who face the struggle. Many of them, many of the engineering colleges, many of the management institutions are struggling to place their students. Yeah, that's another consequence. What about migration? Several people had migrated to several other countries, like the most attractive destinations are New Zealand, Canada, Australia. The migration is also likely to get a hard hit. It's not just migrating permanently, maybe for studies. A lot of students used to go for their higher studies. In fact, Ivy League colleges are giving free courses now and is encouraging more of sponsored, because that, Asian students are mostly like a cash cows for them, and they wanted people to go there. But the demand for the Asians to go for higher studies abroad has considerably come down. In fact, if I may quote an example which I know in person, he's the director of IIM Kashipur. Let me not take his name, but his son has got admission in China. They have made a huge, the course itself is like 50, 60 lakhs for a master's program. They got admission in China and they had to withdraw the course, withdraw from, from that institution. And he took admission in. So this is just one case, multiplied with thousands and even more. The number of students who were aspiring to go abroad for job, for their studies, or even permanent migration is also going to become less attractive. Now, another one is about work from home. I think I mentioned already, Deloitte, they did the study and they say work from home would become a trend. Going with the survey, 37% of the employees globally have responded positively to stay with work from home, because there are possibilities of balancing your personal and professional life there. Just as I've tried to narrate it through. But there is another sector which most of the times we ignore: the unorganized or the informal sector. The number of people who are working there, 450 million people work in the sector. A lot of migrant laborers, they were the ones during the initial phase of the lockdown, the kind of struggle that they all had. Some of them, they walk 200 kilometers, 300 kilometers, and by the time they reach home, probably maybe it's just 1 or 2 kilometers radius, they collapse and they die. So a lot of people in the informal, unorganized sector, and roughly the estimate is 450 million people, are dejected, they are disappointed, they don't have job. So pandemic has brought in lots and lots of consequences in terms of business functioning, in terms of job opportunities, in terms of placements, in terms of migration, in terms of mental health of people. It has had a really, really hard hit. But on the other side, there is, till now, probably about 1 hour, I was setting a context to get into the topic. This is what the topic is: the gig economy. Now, what is gig economy? Gig economy is having a positive effect post-pandemic. Now, what exactly is this gig economy? It's not something which had evolved post-pandemic. It was there in practice. For example, our earlier generations, your grandparents, your parents might have joined an organization and retired from the same organization. Yeah, it's a lifelong employment with the earlier generations we're looking for. Probably the past 10 to 15 years, things have changed, especially people working in the IT sector. They might have already worked in multiple organizations. But it's not about an employment that we are discussing in the gig economy. It's for a task which you are called for. You're called for a task, you complete the task, and you are paid for that task. That's it. There is no lifelong job. There is no lifelong employment. For example, you are good with content writing, or you are good with teaching economics. You come, teach the content, you're paid for it, you go out from the organization. You are paid only for the work that you've done. There is no lifelong employment, to make it very simple. Now, a gig worker can opt to work in multiple organizations. So there the problem is, it matters a lot on how you perform. If you perform good, maybe you could work in 3 or 4 different organizations, mint money working in multiple organizations. Yeah. So there are possibilities with the rise of gig economy. Now, in a gig economy, the work is temporary. As I said, it is not a lifelong job. It is more flexible. And if you're good with a particular task, you're called only for that task. And you are an independent contractor or more of a freelancer. I think that would be a little more appropriate way of presenting a gig economy. You are more of a freelancers. The demand for freelancers is likely to increase. But this rise of gig economy has also brought in both positives and also negatives. Now, what are the positives? What are the pros of gig economy? The gig economy can benefit the workers, business, and consumers by making the work more adaptable, making the work more flexible, and more cheaper, because you need not pay, a lot of other. You're paid only for the task. You're paid only for the task which you're asked to complete. There is no PF. There is no retirement benefit. Yeah. So for the organization, it is beneficial. And how about the employees? Employees gets more flexibility to work in multiple organizations. Now, those engaged, for example, adjunct or part-time faculty, let's take the example from the educational institutions. They can work in multiple organizations. They can work at Dayapuram, they could work at Devgiris, they can work at Malabar Christian College. And from every organization, you get paid for the task that you're completing. Yeah, I hope you're getting the context of what is gig economy. Gig economy is rising post-pandemic. Now, what are the cons of this gig economy? There you have to perform. But the problem there is no job security. And there is no steady job. And there is no long-term relationship with your workers or the employers or the organization, with your clients, your vendors. Everything becomes momentary. And there is a possibility of burnout as well, because sometimes working in multiple organizations might become tiring, stressful. Yeah, maybe one after the other if you have to scout from one organization to another. So, but that's the kind of economy for 2 reasons. One, with the advent of 4th industrial revolution, or the industry 4.0, technology is taking over a lot of jobs which are routine and repetitive in nature. You don't need an accountant, you don't need a lawyer, you don't need a doctor, because all those, you don't need an investor. So many examples I've quoted earlier. All of those routine, repetitive jobs would be taken over by technology. And that's what the predictions are by the McKinsey's report, which got published in 2017, December. Yeah. But that's when the gig economy, which was already there, is slowly picking up, and more people, more and more independent contractors and freelancers have started exploring the opportunity. So what is exactly the gig economy? We are talking about we are talking about super high quality work available in a gig fashion, where you wake up in the morning, your phone will buzz, and you'll have 5 different jobs from people you've worked earlier, or you've been referred to by people. For example, a professor at your institution, maybe Twinkle, or maybe TG Sir, or one of them, if they're good with one subject, and all the institutions in Calicut know that that professor is good with that subject, the same professor is called to all the institutions. You have an expertise. It's mostly expert driven content. Yeah. And you're paid for the task that you complete, and you don't have a permanent job. I hope you're getting a sense of what the economy is, the gig economy is. So what are the reasons why people are going for gig economy? You have a lot of autonomy. You have an autonomy on the content that you prepare and deliver. You have a lot of hold there. So the best part is, even if you're having a permanent job, you could go and work elsewhere. The earning while seeking a better job. See, if the work that you're currently doing is not fully satisfying, but there is a possibility of doing a gig work, yeah, better job satisfaction. You could find additional source of income, balancing your career and family needs, because most of the gig economy related jobs can be done as a work from home. It's mostly based on a work from home model. Now, you could make an extra money. Okay, so there are a couple of things. Before apps, most of these on-demand services was happening through phone calls or through referrals. But today, the advantages with, again, referring back to the fourth industrial revolution, we have the possibility of getting or staying connected with people using different applications. So with the advent or becoming the app becoming popular, the possibility of staying connected and finding newer jobs has actually evolved the gig economy. Earlier, it was called the freelance economy or agile working or online platforms or on-call work. But today, it's mostly about, and you imagine a sector. We already have such applications and job possibilities: grocery delivery, ride sharing, restaurant food delivery, simple household tasks, car rental services, tutoring. A lot of my students, Nikita, one of my good students, Nikita Mehta, she had started online tutoring. Carolyn Teresa is another of my student. She had started online yoga and fitness. In Pooja Bonsley is another of my students. She had started online, this. It's all contributing to the rise of gig economy. It's all contributing to the freelancers. I hope you're getting a point what I'm trying to deliver. A cross section of job opportunities, the possibility of gig economy is increasing. So there is a very interesting article which was published in April 2018 in Harvard Business Review. Please do go back and read if you find this topic interesting. It talks in detail about how gig economy is evolving and the different possibilities and the challenges which it has brought in. Now, let me kind of, since I've taken more time than what I was permitted, let me take another 10 to 15 minutes to kind of wind up the topic and the discussion and take more questions, because that's something, otherwise it will become more one-sided. So gig economy has created a unique environment by enhancing or establishing and maintaining liberating connections. Yeah, people are free, but at the same time they are binded. Free to do work in an individual creative space, but they're all binded to work for a cause to which only if you deliver well, you will be paid. What does something which I really like about online teaching is that earlier, just think about, you might be able to relate with it. Think about this. Good teaching was rarely recognized in classroom teaching, and bad teaching was rarely punished. Even if you teach bad, you can't punish that teacher. But think about online teaching. When you're doing online teaching, it's not just the student. The parents are watching, and everyone is watching what you're delivering. And some parents come back and say, is this for what we are paying so much? Is this the quality of work that for which it's kind of overrated as well? So the point is, in gig economy, you have to perform or else you will perish. It's perform or perish. You have to really be good at the work that you're doing. Yeah. So the more good you are, the more work you get. That's what gig economy is in short. Now, let me kind of skip a few slides and ask a few questions. I have covered two parts of my presentation. The initial part was mostly about the fourth phase of industrialization and how much technology has transformed organizations and the brought in possibilities and its challenges. Second, I spoke mostly about the current pandemic and the possibilities it has brought in. At the same time, challenges outnumber the possibilities. Um, and today, or probably now, I'll try to kind of summarize and look at it from a different perspective. What is the ray of hope? The ray of hope, I think, is the rise of gig economy. And how do we stay relevant? That was another question which I raised. Automation anxiety. People are having, people are anxious about their future, about the uncertainty or the, I also introduced the concept of VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. There, how do we become relevant? But think about this. Isn't this a convergence point? Isn't this pandemic a convergence point? Now, I mentioned about this earlier also, Satya Nadella's statement. What we wanted to see, what digital transformation we wanted to see in 20 years had happened in just 2 years. 2 years had happened in just 2 months. Now, this was a very interesting a cartoon which I came across. Who led the digital transformation in your organization? Is it the CEO or the CTO, or is it COVID-19? You have the answer. Most of us became a pro to technology post COVID-19. We started learning newer methods of teaching online, newer possibilities of conducting assessments online. So digital transformation is one major shift which has happened. And I'll skip quite a few. And this transformation had already begun in certain organizations which were really futuristic in nature. For example, earlier I spoke about gig economy, but along with gig economy, there was another thing which was becoming common as the rhythmic workplaces. What is rhythmic workplaces? It's a blend of online and offline. And organizations who had already started rhythmic workplaces. Why I'm quoting this, why I'm mentioning this is rhythmic workplaces is the future. Rhythmic workplaces is the future for gig economy. Now, rhythmic workplaces is where you have a formal setup in the office and you have an informal setup back home or anywhere you are, you are placed or located. So Apple, they had experimented it even before COVID. They had a team space, which is the office space. They had a me space, which is at the home. They have an open space anywhere. It could be a park, a lobby, it could be a cafe. There are different co-working spaces. We work, co-work, there are different models. And then there is a virtual space, the holistic connector of team, me space, and open space. They had already experimented this rhythmic workplaces much before the pandemic. And this model is going to continue in education. Most of the academic institutions, most of the business organizations are likely to continue the online model, or at least the positives of the online models. In fact, we are planning, Christ, where I work, is planning to conduct an international conference. And this time we are expecting, we have already started getting positive responses from people across the globe, which was not possible earlier. They need not travel. See, they could be sitting at their own places and doing the paper presentations. So the possibility of such rhythmic workplaces is not just in academics, but across organizations. So to transition from the conventional model to the newer possibilities, what is required is a new mindset to transition from traditional business organizations to the new model, which primarily I'll be focusing more about the gig economy. I'll come to it in a while. I spoke about volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, which is which mostly has a negative connotation, but there is an antidote to it. Organization which has a vision, individuals who has a vision, is likely to survive. Individuals and organizations who has an understanding of all the changes, maybe this gig economy is something new for most of us. If you start exploring and try to understand the possibilities, you have a possibility. If you have a clarity on what is expected in the changing technology and the post-pandemic world, I think you have a possibility there. And if you're agile, there is a saying, um, you know, it's the survival of the fittest. Charles Darwin had said. I always slightly modify and say it is not just the survival of the fittest, it is the survival of the fastest, because the world is changing quite rapidly. You need to adapt to these changes quite fast. Adaptability is the king. Adaptability is what decides your fate and destiny in a change which is quite rapid. So agility, preparing, quickly responding. So a person or an institution having a vision to anticipate the changes, understand possibilities, have clarity about what needs to be done, and is quite agile, will have a possibility. And that possibility is what gig economy is throwing open for us. Now, another thing, a couple of things which I wanted to discuss is World Economic Forum had come up with something called Future of Jobs report. And they listed around 10 qualities which every individual needs to possess if you need to stand relevant. And this is in multiple contexts. It's with the changing technologies, socio-economic, political context. These are some of the qualities which we need to have. By 2020, they're further modified and listed a few more qualities, which I've listed on the left-hand side. And please do go back. I mean, why I'm mentioning the future of, or the dawn of singularity, a lot of articles, a lot of books, a lot of references, why I've mentioned is to make a note and then go back and read and understand what makes you relevant and how do you become relevant. And this is a brilliant report, Future of Jobs report by World Economic Forum. And then, okay, let me quick. There are a few concepts as well. If you're creative, if you believe in collaboration, if you're good with critical thinking, and if your communication skills are good with ability to empathize with others and working in teams, these are certain common terms that you would find in almost all the job reports, all the reports or all the articles which talks about the skill sets required that will make you relevant. Yeah, I've been reading a couple of articles, and these terms you would find in almost all the papers. Creativity, apply your creative thinking, constructive thinking, critical thinking, collaboration, ability to work in a team. If you in a gig economy, you will have to work with multiple bosses who might have different temperaments, different way of understanding, different wavelength of understanding. So you need to have that ability to adapt, collaborate, critical thinking, communication, and your empathy, empathizing, or mostly about emotional intelligence. So this is again a report by World Economic Forum. Okay, I'll skip this part. Let me come to, again, the gig economy part, summarizing it with a concept called ikigai. I'll take another 5 minutes and then I'll wind up. There is a beautiful concept in management called ikigai. It's a Japanese concept. Ikigai is a blend of 4 different aspects. In a gig economy, if you try to understand your ikigai, you will be able to create a difference. And what is that ikigai? If you know what you love to do, that's the first, in the first circle in the diagram, you would find that. If you know what you love to do, and if that what you're doing is what the world needs, that's in the second circle. And if that what the world needs is something that can be paid for, that's in the third circle. And if that is what you're good at, I think you have found your space in a gig economy. Twinkle's sister is my student, and she is into, she has started a venture, and it's quite unusual. I was surprised when, after completing her economics, how she ventured into a venture, into something which mostly people don't prefer. But that was her calling. That's what I feel. That's something which she loves. That's something which the world needs. That's something which she could pay for, or that's something which she is extremely good at. So that's where you have to think and reflect about what is it that you love doing. If it's poetry, if it's content writing, if it's coding, if it is music, if it is yoga, if it's fitness, if it's literature, sports, games, arts, anything. Think about what takes you to a point of ikigai, and then you would find a space in, there's a saying, the purpose of life is to find a life of purpose. Ikigai helps you find that purpose, and that's exactly what I wanted to convey. Um, Let me just kind of wind up with this small example. I think I started off with 2 points. One is about the changes in technology. I was trying to cross connect it with the fourth phase of industrialization, quoting a few examples. And the second was to give you a picture of the current pandemic and the different challenges and possibilities in both Industry 4.0 and the pandemic. And then I introduced the concept of rhythmic workspaces and how is it going to continue with the rising gig economy. So gig economy is nothing but an open space for the freelancers. Yeah. And then gig economy, you could create a mark if you're able to find an antidote to VUCA, which also I tried to explain, and then summarized it with finding a purpose. Because as I said, there are two important days in our life: the day when you are born, and second is the day when you realize for why you were born, or for the purpose for which you were born. Yeah. So it's all about, ikigai is all about finding that life purpose, and that purpose would help you find a space in a gig economy. So that's kind of the summary of the entire little discussion. But let me kind of also, this is, I think, an interesting way of summarizing. This is a bridge which was constructed in Choluteca in United States of America and Central America. In 1996, they constructed it. And the only condition was it should be the strongest, and it should be an architectural or an engineering marvel. And they took the support of the Japanese technology. But what happens in 1998 is there was continuous rain for almost 4 days. It was like 75 centimeters rain, continuous rain for almost 4 days. And it destroyed almost all the bridges in this place, in Choluteca, including the connecting roads to this bridge. Now, this bridge today is a bridge of nothing, or it's a bridge that leads us to nowhere. Why? Because two reasons. One, the river itself, after this flood and the continuous rain, changed its direction, and the roads which were connecting on either ends were also washed away in this. So the point is, when you think about building your abilities, you need to build your abilities to adapt, not just to build the abilities to last. I think you're getting the point. The qualities or the traits that you're looking for to make yourself relevant in the phase of fourth industrial revolution is also in the post-pandemic world should be not just to last, but also to adapt to the changes which is likely to happen every moment, every second, every split nanosecond. So on that note, I wish to wind up, and I have taken exactly 1 hour, 30 minutes for my little bit of an introduction. As I said, I'm not an expert. I was just kind of trying or attempting to generate a sort of curiosity to trigger some thoughts on these domains, which we've taken up for discussion. If you have any questions, I'm not saying I'll be able to answer all your questions, but if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions, if you have a better experience or an example or an offering, an idea, it's always welcome. It's time, for questions if there are any. You could either unmute and ask your question, or else type in the chat box. I'll try attempting. Maybe, if not a solid answer, at least a half-baked answer, some lead, some possible references which I can quote and help you find an answer which you are seeking. If there are any questions.
I think there are a few questions in the chat box.
All right.
There is one. Are you able to read it, or should I read it out for you?
1 minute. I am not able to read the chat. Yes. I think I am. Shruti P. Sir, by COVID pandemic, if consumers reduce their spending, so more small and medium-sized business might have to turn loans to bridge the demand gap. It is giving lenders an opportunity to boost their business. I didn't get that question. Can you let her unmute and ask the question, if you don't mind? Shruti P is the one who had asked. By COVID pandemic, if consumers reduce their spending, so more small and medium-sized business might have to turn loans to bridge the gap. Sorry,
I think what she meant is they would have to apply for loans, and would this give the lenders an opportunity to boost their business? Like, would lenders be able to take advantage of the situation?
Loan is just one option, but is lack of finance the only challenge that we are currently facing? There is lack of demand, there is lack of business opportunity, there are better players in the market. I stay at a place where there's a Reliance supermarket, and all the nearby small supermarkets, they don't have much footfall there. Why? Because there are better options. So I think the challenge is not just about, if I've understood your question correctly, it's not just about lack of money. It is also about uh, lack of opportunity, lack of demand, newer competitors. So I think you'll have to, even if it's a small size organization, you'll have to really look at the segment and devise a strategy which makes you relevant as compared to your competitors. I don't know which ways it works, whether it is technological upgradation or a complete renewal of a business model. As we always say, one size doesn't fit all. One advice doesn't work with every organization or every sector. So based on each sector, um, probably one has to devise a strategy which makes them. But this, as I said, is a God-given time for us to sit back and think about what is working and what is not.
Thank you, sir. I think this idea of gig economy actually gives the youngsters, those who are just out of college and those who are even pursuing their courses, an opportunity to make their own income.
They
So
are.
yeah. So I
And
think this was a good topic for those who would be thinking of freelancing.
okay. I'll just quote a few instances. There is this Jeevan Anand Reddy. He's my student and he is a freelance. He used to sing in a lot of pubs and clubs there in Bangalore. And and that was his only source of income. But post lockdown, none of these, he has a lot of EMI to pay and he was really struggling. But post lockdown, he started online teaching, online music performance, live performance for the corporates, for the, this is also a time where people are struggling or grappling with their mental health. So there are customized demands, requests coming for which he's monetizing. The point here is, this is a time people have started experimenting. um, None of us would have experimented this online teaching possibilities had this pandemic been not there. So I think a lot of people have started experimenting it. Yoga, then fitness training, as I said, then music, then online teaching. So many experiments are done by people. And I think that experiment is something which help us understand in the long run what works and what doesn't work.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone who would like to ask any questions?
It may not necessarily be the students. You could, I mean, I understand there are a lot of faculties as well. If there is anything to add on, or if you feel like I should be explaining a point a little more in detail, or you have any questions, please do. Okay, I got one more. Neha Latif. Technology has made our life easy, but people these days are being lethargic. How will this help in getting a job? Okay, I mean, I really like the kind of questions when I come to your campus. No, I still remember a question. I spoke about artificial intelligence last time when I was in your campus. And one of the students stood up and asked, "Sir, artificial intelligence is fine. What about artificial stupidity? Now, what if technology goes wrong? Who will take the responsibility?" That's a brilliant question. And another question which I still remember is, "Sir, will there be, will the religion be having a relevance when technology supersedes a human life?" And that's the way the kind of questions which I get, and those are things which compelled me to go back and read further. Okay, let me address this question. Technology has made a life easy, but people these days are being lethargic. How will this help us in getting a job? I mean, that in itself, if you're aware that that's a red alert, if you're aware that you're becoming lethargic, that's a word of caution that you're giving to yourself, or probably to whomever you're referring to. And they should understand that you are not an important, you are not important in a workspace, because there are technology which can do the work much better. Let me not mention the name of an IT firm, but a very popular, a multinational IT company had bought robots, and they've invested in artificial intelligence which can replace 5 or 10 individuals' work. One whole day's work can be done in just 5 minutes, which means you are no more important. You are absolutely irrelevant. And what is the advantage of investing in technology? Especially when you think about virtual or online business. See, no employee will work for you 24/7. But if you invest in, let's say, a website, or if you invest in an online business model, it works for you 24/7. Yeah. So the point is, technology certainly do have an advantage, and it's not a time to feel lethargic. It's not a time. It's a time that we have to be more aware, and we have to be on our toes. On our toes. We have to be on our. We have to be really cautious and conscious about all these changes which are happening around, and respond to it quickly. That's something what I've mentioned. Agile thinking. Quickly, you need to change, or else you become completely irrelevant. Now, since you've raised this question, I also wanted to mention about the dinosaur. Do you know the reason why dinosaur became extinct? Dinosaur had a very weak sensory organ. If something happens in the back of its body, it takes a lot of time to reach its head because its sensory organs are so weak. So what happens is whatever happens around in the environment takes a lot of time for it to adjust. But in change, what is needed is adaptability. You have to quickly adapt to the changes, or else, just as it happened to a dinosaur, you would become extinct. You would become irrelevant. You would get wiped out, say it be from the job market or in the education sector, any sector that you could possibly imagine. It's not a time to stay lethargic. It's a time to be alert, conscious about all these changes, and be cautious, be prepared. Uh, you know, to bring about a change in yourself. Are there more questions?
I think the there aren't any more questions.
Okay. So I just have, just one slide which I thought I should use. I'm sure all of you know about Nelson Mandela. He died in 2013, South Africa. An amazing personality, mostly compared with Mahatma Gandhi. Is a big fan of Mahatma Gandhi. He, in his entire lifespan, had spent 27 years in a prison. Yeah. So somebody once asked him, "Sir, you might have had a really bad time in prison, might have struggled a lot in prison. Uh, it might have been a testing time for you." And his response is what I wish to share with you now. He said, "No, I wasn't struggling." He said, "I was preparing. I was preparing for the life after I come out of my prison." I think this pandemic or the fourth industrial revolution or the break from the routine, or probably if I may call it the house arrest that we are currently in, is a time for us to prepare ourselves for a better tomorrow. On that note, I say thank you to Dayapuram. Thank you, special thanks to Professor Dr. Ashley, who had invited, and all the organizers who had made this possible, little interaction possible. Let's learn and continue to learn from each other. Let's stay connected. Thank you very much. So I'm leaving my contact details here. If you wish to kind of discuss or share any points or continue this conversation, we could do that. Or else I wind up.
Thank you, sir. I invite Jabin to deliver the vote of thanks.
Thank you.
It's my privilege to propose the vote of thanks and acknowledge the contributions of those who made this program possible. I, Jebin, on behalf of Dayapuram Arts and Science College for Women, would like to extend my sincere thanks to Mr. Rishikesh KB for this engaging and thought-provoking session. I would like to thank Dr. N.P. Ashley, sir, volunteer in charge of Dayapuram College, for providing us with many such programs. Thank you, sir. My sincere thanks to our patron, C.T. Abdurrahman, sir, for his constant support. Thank you, sir. I also thank Dr. M. Bashir, sir, for his valuable presence. I also thank our principal, Dr. Srividya N.T. ma'am, for supporting us throughout this session. Thank you, ma'am. I thank our HOD and teachers who are here with us. Thank you all. A big thanks to the technical team for making this program a successful one. Last but not the least, I thank all the participants from Dayapuram and other colleges in Calicut for being in this session. Thank you all.